Towards the end of 2016, I was planning to slow down my consulting and coaching practice and ease into retired life. Then the presidential election happened. While I wallowed in despair, brokenheartedness, and hopelessness, I could still catch a glimpse of humanity around me. When a building is on fire, most people run away, but some run towards the fire. During a hurricane, strangers often come out to help strangers. When 500,000 women descended on Washington, D.C. the day after Trump's inaugural, they were there not because they were there to protest, but to remind us all the good and decent in our humanity. And when the donut shop owner could not manage taking care of his cancer-stricken wife and still keep the donut shop open at the same time, the customers came out and stepped in and bought all the donuts so that he could go home to be with his wife. There's thousands of these stories of kindness. They make me believe that at the core of every human being, we have a set of code that tells us what is right, what is wrong. This is the basic goodness of our humanity. I felt the call to wake up people, to restore their goodness. But I wonder if I was ready and have enough courage to take on this challenge, because I realized I must confront my judgment, fear, despair, hatred towards who I thought were evil. This was when I told myself I needed more spiritual grounding. It led to almost 3 years of my discernment journey. When I entered a Buddhist divinity school in 2019, I did not have a clear picture of what I was there to learn, especially I've never been religious. I continued to ask this question after I transferred to an Interfaith chaplaincy school. After 3 years of struggle, I have learned that a belief or a theology is nothing more than a worldview. We need to continue to practice through direct experience to turn our beliefs into our truth and guiding principles. I have learned that to firmly be grounded myself in my spirituality is live my truth. I grew up on the island of Taiwan, where the exiled nationalist Chinese government has resided. It is a society where people were free to follow their sacred traditions. There was a period of time my mother would take me to a different worship place every Sunday. This week Catholic, next week Baptist, following week Buddhist temple, and Mormon, and so on and so on. I finally asked her, what is it we're doing? My mother said, honey, we're buying insurance. We cannot afford to offend anybody's God. So I learned that what is it like to be respectful and tolerant of multiple faiths. I went to Catholic school for 7 years, but never became Catholic. As a Chinese, my culture had been dictated by Confucianism that laid out what is the right way to be. And no religion can replace this 4,000 years of tradition. Under the influence of Confucianism, my people were raised to follow the rules and respect authority. There's a hierarchy in every system we live in, including family, school, workplace, and society. Most of us have no interest in jumping into another hierarchical system, such as a religion. As a woman of color, living in the US, I had to learn to fight against racism and sexism, and to prove that I deserve to be a full member of this society. As I got ready to enter the divinity school as a non-Christian and non-religious person, I was reminded of one more oppression, that is religionism. In this Christian dominant society, people automatically assume that I am a Christian. For example, when some of my Christian friends invite me to dinner, before we eat, they will hold each other's hand and pray openly. They included me in this ritual without asking me if I had the same practice. This is the most subtle form of oppression, even they meant well. And I often did not have enough courage to decline to join them, so I end up silencing my true self. When I accepted the offer to work as an intern chaplain in a hospital this summer, I was full of apprehension. This term, chaplaincy, came from Christianity. If I'm not Christian, nor do I even believe in God, can I still be a chaplain? But I decided to accept the assignment because I wanted to have a first-hand, direct experience to help me decide if this is something I'm called to do. And I wanted to find out if I have deep enough compassion and conviction to help ease people's pain and suffering. So from June through August this year, I worked full-time in this hospital. According to Gallup survey, American membership in houses of worship has continued to decline. In 2020, only 47% Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down from 70% in 1999. But when you enter hospital, you will not notice this declining trend. The hospital where I worked had a majority of the patients registered as either Roman Catholic or Christians. Although the hospital spiritual care world, they aim to provide interfaith care, the culture we encounter among the patients and the fellow chaplains is still Christian. This was the source of my anxiety when I started my internship. And I also noticed that the majority of the people have very little idea of what a chaplain's role is. They only know clergy from a Christian context, priests from a Catholic context. If I don't offer communion, sacrament, baptism, hear confession, or proselytize, what was my role? Although we chaplains are supposed to provide interfaith care, the culture we live in still expects us to be Christian. How can I meet the patients where they are and still be true to my faith? And I didn't want to recite the Lord's Prayer like my script. I struggled for the entire 3 months to find the balance. As it turned out, during the time I spent in the hospital, I was only asked twice to explain what my denomination was. Most of the time, the patients were so happy that someone came to visit them and listen to them without poking at them. I have learned to realize how much power I have wearing a chaplain's badge. The patients were forced to lay in their bed in nothing but a thin hospital gown, with most of their dignity stripped away. Often during a whole day, they were left to face their pain and suffering all alone. I learned to be a better listener to their concerns, anxiety, fear, and suffering. I offer comfort and support to them. I learned to do my best to offer them prayers according to my meaning of spirituality. I appeal to the spirit of light that connects us. One day, during a visit to ICU, I met 2 sisters who were grieving for their dying father after knowing that there was nothing medically that could be done. The minute they saw me, they came over, each grabbed one of my shoulders and started to wail with their prayers. They called out to God to take their father home. All I did was stand firmly and offer my body like a tree for them to lean on. They call me Father the Christ at times. On a different day, while comforting the wife of a man who suffered from liver cancer while he was out of the room getting more tests. I got her permission to put my hand on her shoulder. When I was leaving, they brought him back into the room. The wife ran after me, insist that I put my hand on his shoulder too. In many of these incidents, I knew I was used as an instrument. I could feel the electric connection between me and the divine. Without any resistance, I let myself be used. At that moment, it was no longer important if I had the same belief as my patients. Another time, I visited a woman who had just gone through her 25th surgery. I asked her if she was afraid. She said no. She said, I know Christ was there with me the whole time. He's my Father. As she spoke, her tone of voice sounded like coming from a little girl. Bed after bed, I listened to cancer patients who described their faith in God and expressed peace in their hearts. I was moved by their devotion. They told me that they were afraid. They were not afraid to die because they believed they're going home to their Father. While I may not see God as a father, but I respect their belief has brought them peace in their heart. I wonder what brought peace to my heart. Instead of offering a standard Christian prayer, I constructed prayers based on their life story. On their behalf, I invoked the divine spirit that connected me and them and offered them blessings. I felt authentic while I provided the spiritual comfort that they needed. Almost every day, I would be called to answer code blue when the medical staff tried to resuscitate a patient who stopped breathing. Often these patients would be approaching the end of their lives where no medical treatment was available, but neither they nor their loved ones signed a DNR, a do not resuscitate order. So the medical staff was legally obligated to keep pumping their chest. During one such code blue situation, standing in the room, I could hear the patient's rib cage cracking and see the blood coming up the tubes. Between the first and the second code, the doctor tried and failed to persuade the patient's daughter to sign a DNR. Thinking about how I followed my mother's wishes and let her die without any intervention, my heart broke for this 90-year-old man who would not have chance to die in peace. And for the medical staff who suffer from moral stress. I wanted to yell at the daughter, stop, but I reminded myself that she might feel the need to make sure every opportunity was given to keep her father alive. Who am I to know what the most loving thing to do was at that moment? As the COVID cases crept up again, I watched many of the medical staff going from moral stress to moral injury when they came close to losing their heart and emptying their spirit. I struggled to dig deeper in myself so I can be standing firm for them. The bigger challenge, though, came from my fellow chaplains, who included Catholic, Southern Baptist, and Protestant. They often wonder out loud if I had a religion when I said I didn't believe in God. They also said, we wish you knew God. They thought they were trying to save me. What I really meant to say was that I had a different definition of what God is. When I said I'm interfaith, they urged me to choose one faith. Being interfaith to me is to follow a common principles taught in almost every religion about love and compassion. To be interfaith to me is to be the bridge. When I tried to explain my faith, they had trouble accepting me. Facing their daily challenge, I felt pressure to defend myself. By the time I completed my internship, I had become more of my true self. I am also grateful for the pressure I felt because it allowed me to deepen my understanding of my faith. I have learned that religion is an artificial shackle that we can all break free from when we have our true spirit in us. UU's 7 principles have become much more meaningful to me, and I'm more prepared to use my 25-word elevator speech to explain my spirituality, or maybe a little more than 25 words. Here they are. I believe that at the highest level of our humanity, we all have love, compassion, and kindness. At the highest level, our humanity is an energy source that connects all of us. When our energy meets, there's combustion or chemical reaction where 1 + 1 = 3 or more. Collectively, we are bigger than our individual selves. We are parts of a whole. We are not separate. This collective energy is sacred and mystical. To be the best human, we need to remember to come back to this sacred source. The way I see divine is a collective energy field that provides buoyancy and flows through us like a river. I do not see God as some entity or personality that is on a pedestal. When we pray, we're not petitioning to or bargaining with something outside of ourselves, but to wake up and remember the river in us that connects all of us. Having gotten clearer of my faith, I realized that the rest is all about putting my faith into practice, being the best human being I was born to be. I cannot help but feel anxious sometimes about the current world. It is as if we humans have made a detour from our divine selves, became fragmented and broken, and bought into the false separation. Facing climate disaster, poverty, diseases, violence, power corruption, threat to democracy, just to name a few. I'm trying desperately to hang on to that glimpse of basic goodness among us. At times, I'm struggling to practice loving kindness. I do not feel I could save the world from the edge apocalypse all alone. All I could do is to wake up one person at a time. I pray that all of us let go of our false boundary and let our true essence shine through. We will be able to pick up our broken pieces and become whole again. Then we'll have a chance to reclaim our collective beauty and divine and make this a better world. Before I end my sermon, I'd like to pose these questions to you. First, what is your belief and worldview in 25-word elevator speech? Second, how would you apply and embody your belief or worldview in your everyday life? Number 3, how does your belief bring peace to your heart? Number 4, what is your idea of making this a better world? Namaste.